Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to WatchBox, and thanks for logging on. We're starting the weekend off right with watches, and everything you see here is for sale. Reach out to me. My email address is tmosso@thewatchbox.com. That's for buying, but I'm always looking to build inventory, especially as the holidays approach. We get started early. Sell me a watch, trade me a watch. We pay cash, we pay fast, no upper limit on value paid. We will buy your entire collection of platinum Langes without batting an eye. To buy, trade, or sell, reach out to me. Email tmosso@thewatchbox.com. Let's start with that which I hath promised in the thumbnail. This was one of my favorite new watches of 2020. I'm not a Rolex guy, and I don't drink the Kool-Aid, but I love green dials, and the simplicity and elegance of this Oyster Perpetual 41 truly appeals to me. The watch is graceful. It's gloriously thin at 11.7 millimeters thick with a wonderfully tapered case. It slides easily underneath the cuff, but it's also 100 meters water resistant, anti-magnetic, and highly shock tolerant with lume automatic winding. Let's do a quick lume shot just to show you what you're getting. Rolex chromalite blue lume and plenty of it. The dial, sort of tribute to the 1970s Stella lacquer dials. It is a lush, bottomless glossy green. Of course, the watch has been upgraded a bit from the previous generation of Oyster Perpetuals. It now has a 70-hour power reserve movement, and a big change for fit purposes, it has Easy Link, which the previous Oyster Perpetuals in all sizes did not. So you've got that 5mm in-out adjustment, little embossed Rolex crown, a lift lock system with a beak and a hook, latches shut, removable links fixed by screws, and you can see because it is an OP, it's got a satinated bracelet, so it's got an understated look, though there's a nice contrast about the polish of the case flank and the polish of the bezel. Look at it off angle, and this off-axis gives you a little bit of the sense of the old Rolex bubble backs that came out in 1933, combining the Oyster case with the Perpetual automatic winding system, hence the name Oyster Perpetual. Those were the first modern Rolex sports watches, and this is the direct descendant of that. Now, at 41 millimeters, it is much larger than previous Oyster Perpetuals. It's not thick, but we'll zoom out a little bit here. It's not thick, but it is broad. It's about 51 millimeters from end link to end link, so on my 16 centimeter circumference wrist, it's flat, it's flush, it's a little bit like a cushion case, and it wears very nicely. You can see it is a substantial presence, equal really in terms of wrist presence to a GMT or a Sub, and a little bit bigger even than a Daytona. Let's take a quick look at something that offers a lot of value, well, maybe 3 times the value of a typical entry-level watch. This, I am proud to present to you, is the Triptyque by Lange Söhne for Louis Erard. The timepieces, as you can see here, are the monopusher chronograph, le régulateur 2, and le semaine. This is a wonderfully offbeat day date. All of the watches are limited editions. They made 178 of each example, of which 78 matched sets will be boxed together. So this is one of the matched sets. It actually comes with a digitally signed piece of artwork by Lange Söhne, the famous architect and watch designer. A pioneer in independent watchmaking, his stock has never been higher as he's doing collaborations with seemingly everyone, and Louis Erard has been a big part of that. Now, his watches incorporate elements of de style, but also in some of the sensibility of them. It's not just the fundamental colors, it's things like Dada. And you can really see that with the day-date complication you have here, you have a date, yes, but then you have a number of different facial expressions that represent the days of the week. And you can see that not only do they change their expressions, but they change color as you cycle through. It features the lush and lovely primary colors that made Lange Söhne's original watches famous. Here we have a 40mm case in titanium. All 3 of the watches are 40 millimeters in titanium and 100 meters water resistant. They all wear quite nicely, and they feature these handsome hinge style lugs, so they're very offbeat. You can see the same thing right here with the monopusher chronograph, which has a little red monopusher built in, and it is a fun piece with which to play. It's also the largest one in terms of physical wrist presence. I'll give you a sense of how the watch wears on the wrist. All of them feature these lovely textile straps that makes it literally a breeze in conjunction with Velcro to size them down. I have to say Velcro is something I've only ever seen on these watches and the RM pieces. So here's how the monopusher chronograph looks on my wrist. Just about all the watches have the same wrist presence. They're feather light, and again, all of them are 100 meters water resistant, so no concerns about using them as sports watches. All of them feature solid ETA bases too, so they're very tough, mechanically simple, and reliable. Jumping over to the watch that actually started the original collaboration between Lange Söhne and Louis Erard 3 years ago, the regulator. This is the Régulateur 2, the second one in the series, and of course it separates, like a good regulator will, the minutes, the hours, and the seconds into separate displays. All of the dials feature matte bases, and they have these lovely raised chapter rings that contain the indices, so they are really well thought out for timepieces that are accessible both in terms of sensibility and in terms of price. Of course, we will be selling this triptyque as a set, a matched set. So if you're in for one, you're in for the three. But what a cool way to get into independent horology via one of the great watch designers and independent horology pioneers of our era, Alain Silberstein. Now we're going to stick with accessible watches for a moment, and a watch launched in 2018. This is the Sinn 936 chronograph. As you can see, it is a 43mm watch that wears easily in steel on my 16cm circumference wrist. It's about the size of my EZM 1.1. The lugs are short, so though it's a big watch, it wears a little bit small for its size. I have this same strap on my Sinn. It is wonderfully buttery, though it's a brand new strap. Somehow it features super broken in feel and a wonderfully buttery texture. If you look between the lugs, you can see it says SUG. That is Sinn's case factory. Sinn features a lot of proprietary manufacturing and engineering, and they make their own cases. This case features their Tegament scratch-resistant treatment. It is carbon diffusion up to 1500 Vickers. That's what you get, several microns thick, 1500 Vickers. I've gouged mine with a key on this show, and you've seen that in the past. This watch has that same steel treatment, but you can see it's also 100 meters water resistant, and if we want to translate one expression to a different style, this is 80,000 ampere per meter. I believe this is 1/10 of a Tesla that you're looking at right here. And it is 80,000 ampere per meter, or mil Gauss, 1,000 Gauss. So this is a highly scratch resistant, water resistant, and anti-magnetic chronograph. Now it uses Sinn's SZ05, which is their re-engineering of a Valjoux 7750 automatic. So you can see I have a chronograph register that goes up to 60 minutes. It's not a normal 30-minute chronograph register, and there is plenty of lume. It is a Sinn through and through, a fantastic piece made in Frankfurt, the financial capital of Europe. It is one of the premier manufacturers of sports watches at entry-level prices, and this is a very accessible watch with useful technology. Now let's go upscale. Let's stick with independence. I have finally procured production versions of the Schwarz-Etienne Roma Synergy by Kari Voutilainen. Behold, I have 39mm in steel with the gradient gray dial and 39mm in steel with the blue dial. Voutilainen, of course, is a manufacturer of dials. He also makes the movements and he makes cases. Well, here, unlike the traditional Roma, which is a 42mm watch, we go with 39mm. The dials are made of sterling silver by Camblemi, which is Voutilainen's dial factory. He has a separate case factory, but this is a fabrication on both watches in solid silver. The dials are sterling silver, and we have three different finishes. We have a sunray motif, we have écaille de poisson, or a fish scale, and then we have vague or wave pattern in the sub-registers. So three different guilloche patterns, and you can see two different colors of gray and two different colors of blue on the dial with applique indices and numerals. We're going to turn this watch over, and you can see the manufacture movement. And the impressive thing here is the Schwarz-Etienne truly makes every part of the movement. They make the balance, they make the hairspring, they make the bridges and the plates and the wheels, and then the movement, which is a micro rotor with an 86-hour power reserve and hacking seconds. It goes over to Atelier Voutilainen, where they hand finish the ratchet wheel with black polish and solarization. I don't know if you can quite see this, but even the teeth of the ratchet wheel have been beveled on their side. That is Voutilainen level finish. You'll also note that there is mirrored anglage applied universally across the bridges. I'm doing my best to show it. You can see it best right under my finger here. It is beveled beautifully and hand finished to give it that mirrored shine you can't get with a machine finished bevel. And then there is this spectacular rayon, I would even call it almost a rosette pattern that radiates out from the balance. All of this is done by guilloche engine turning on a rose lathe. Truly special stuff. And then there is a rose gold plate put in place by Kari Voutilainen to remind you who finished the movement. There's engine turning on the base plate. All screws are black polished on their top. And again, we have here 86-hour power reserves with movements made entirely by Schwarz-Etienne. They are making even the hairsprings and the balances, and you can see how beautiful these dials are. The fish scale at center, the sunray outboard, and then the vague or the wave. And of course, it looks like a cross between a Voutilanen and a Philippe Dufour Simplicity. And when a watch looks like the offspring of a Van Wheat and a Simplicity, you know the job has been done right. Now, only 50 examples of each will be made. Previously, I had the prototype, which indicated 100 would be made. Only 50 of each of these will be made. They are $29,000, and they are worth every penny. Hand-finished, lovingly designed, handsomely detailed, perfectly sized, and destined to be very, very rare. This is the way to get into high horology independent watchmaking. This is probably my favorite new watch of the last year. Now, we're not done, because I love many brands and I love many watches, and nothing says H. Moser Cie like the Endeavour Perpetual Calendar. We spoke of Kari Voutilanen, and here we speak of Andreas Streller. He designed the Perpetual Calendar system on this watch. There's an index underneath the hands, 12 hours, 12 months. That little hand indicates the month. And then the date, which is a large format, indicates the month and the date. And you can see how I'm able to adjust forward and backwards. It works both ways. It is a perpetual calendar system that can be adjusted bi-directionally. There is also a hacking or stop seconds function, and there's a power reserve indicator over at 9 o'clock. Now, 7 days is the claim. Reality with this watch is that it will run for almost 9, courtesy of twin mainspring barrels. This is an H. Moser Cie manufacture movement, and through Precision Engineering, which is their small parts constructor, they make the balances, the hairsprings, and the 14-karat gold escapements that go into these models. 6-position adjustment, one more than a standard chronometer, and look at the fluid form of the case. The back is curved to wrap around your wrist. The case is machined and then hand-finished to create these handsome hollows that are then black polished. The bezel extends and expands at 6 o'clock and 12 o'clock. Concave all the way around. Again, fluid is the word. It's almost as though molten precious metal were drawn out, and this is white gold here, but it's as though molten white gold were drawn out and then flash frozen to create this shape. You cannot create this shape using a stamped case that's mass-produced. The dial is a Fume Fade, which is a signature of Moser, light at the center, dark at the edge, and they call this color funky blue. The watch is 40.8 millimeters in diameter, and it wears super compact on my 16-centimeter circumference wrist. You could wear this watch on a wrist as small as 13.5 centimeters circumference. Down the barrel, you can see it's nowhere near the edge of my wrist, and it is beautifully and thoughtfully made. You can even see on the reverse side lovely double-crested Côte de Genève across the bridges, and then barrel arbors set in golden chaton fixed by black polished screws, as it would have been in the pocket watch era of Moser construction. Moser out of Schaffhausen, Switzerland, German Swiss. They're making 1,500 watches a year, so as they say, these are very rare. Now, let's keep going. Let's take a look at something entirely different. Let's talk about steel, but did you expect me to pull out 2 steel Vacheron dress watches? Let's talk about them in chronological order, the order they came out. This is the Historique 1942 Triple Calendar. It was launched in late 2017. It features corne de vache or cowhorn style lugs with these lovely Art Deco era polished gadroons. It's 40 millimeters in steel with a dial that includes a number of different metallic textures and tones. You can see the dominant one is the sunburst motif, which is subtle but rendered in champagne on the center dial. Then we have blue on white radial printing for the pointer style date with lovely open 9s and open 6s. There is a custom typeface used for the numerals on this watch, and you can see serifs, open 9s, open 6s, very beautiful, memorable, and capped by fired blue baton style hands. It is a triple calendar. Turn it all over and you have a version of the caliber 4400, which is Geneva hallmark, manual wind, and includes a superb 65-hour power reserve. I like the details, including the interior angles that are featured on these bridges. A lot of Geneva hallmark movements don't even feature one interior angle. Here you actually get 3 of them, where 2 bevels meet, forming that sharp cleft crease. You can also see the screw heads are black polished with chamfered slots in circumference. The bevels are wide, bright, and luminous, and so are the Côte de Genève, which are a little bit narrow, but that's a different look, and one Vacheron deliberately chose to give it less of an antiquated look than, say, a big, broad-waved pocket watch. Geneva hallmark on the movement, but you can see Geneva hallmark also on the case. Since 2012, that has been a full watch standard. The watch is in steel, which makes it very practical for daily use, as it's going to be a bit more robust and scratch-resistant than a precious metal. It is a fantastic watch, and probably one of Vacheron's best in the modern era. There are a lot of details to love. My favorite is the blueprint on the silver day and month discs. Now jump into 2019, and Vacheron launches a steel version of its 1955 Corne de Vache, the historique 1955 Corne de Vache, previously made in platinum and rose gold, now available in steel. This is not the Hodinkee. This is the model that came out in 2019, 1 year after the Hodinkee. We have a lovely silver dial with lovely three-dimensional baton-style hands. They have the look of hands made manually, as though this were a small independent brand. We have white gold hands, white gold indices, and Roman numerals at 12 and 6. We have sunken registers for the chronograph and a fired blue chronograph seconds and chronograph minute hand. Here you can see Corne de Vache, inspired by the historic reference 6087, which is a very scarcely made piece that came out in 1955, and they made just about 3 dozen of those. This watch captures the best of that model, but in stainless steel, robustly scratch-resistant and durable the way the triple calendar was, and we have the lush and lovely caliber 1142. It's based on the Le Mans 2310 that you also saw as the Omega 321 and the Patek Philippe CH2770. It is a handsomely finished Geneva hallmark caliber with a column wheel and a lateral clutch. All of the finishing that we saw on the 4400 on the last watch is present here, with the addition of steel components that feature both that mirrored beveling on the edge and satination on their tops. We have a free-sprung regulator with an overcoil hairspring adjusted in 5 positions. And then you can see there is a Geneva hallmark, well, not Geneva hallmark, that's right there, but there is a Maltese cross at the center of the column wheel, and it's black polished. And to remind you that that is the symbol of Vacheron Constantin. The watch is 38.5 millimeters in diameter, and you can see it wears easily. Both this and the triple calendar can be worn on wrists as small as 13.5 centimeters circumference. So this is a fantastic way to get into high horology. Holy Trinity brand and one of their best efforts, not just recently, but of all time. I would actually rather wear this than the historic original. The original is small and delicate and too expensive. This is just right. Let me ask you, experts, Audemars Piguet fans, what do you think this is? When do you think it was made? You might be surprised to learn that this came out in 2018, though it appears exactly like the original 25721 Royal Oak Offshore on a bracelet. In fact, this is the reference 26237ST that came out in 2018 on the 25th anniversary of the original Royal Oak Offshore, and it includes a number of nostalgic elements not seen in years, certainly since the early 2000s on the Royal Oak Offshore. It is a 250-piece 42mm steel limited edition. You can see it features the original baton-style hands, the so-called blob indices, and then the petite, or I should say in this case, the Grand Tapisserie. It is a smaller hobnail than you will find on the, I actually think this is the Petite Tapisserie. I think this is the Petite, and this is exactly what you find on the Jumbo. So there are 3 different hobnail dials that AP has. There's the Mega, which is on the Offshore today, and that is stamped. And then there's the Grand and the Petite. This is the Petite, the smaller hobnail, the important thing being that a pantograph is used to create the Petite and the Grand. So they are artisanally crafted in vintage fashion rather than the more modern stamped dials on the current Offshores. So you have a dial here, blue galvanized and cut on a pantograph that is made exactly the same way as the Royal Oak Jumbo. Now internally it has a modern AP movement. The 3126 base, free sprung, full balance bridge, hacking seconds, quick set date, 50 to 55 hour power reserve with a Dubois de Praz vertical clutch chronograph module. There is almost nothing externally to betray the fact that this is the modern 250-piece limited edition, except for the fact that the condition of this watch is better than virtually any 90s Offshore you're going to encounter. And on a full bracelet, it preserves the basic aesthetic of the Gerald Genta original. Of course, the 1993 Royal Oak Offshore was designed by Emmanuel Guet, then in his 20s, and it hit the market in 1993. You can also see this clasp far more secure and solid than on the 90s era watch, but on the wrist, it looks like you just walked out of an Audemars Piguet vendor in 1994, 1993, right at the beginning with the original Royal Oak Offshore on your wrist. And again, this one, never hitting the refinisher's wheel, has all of the sharpness and definition that the original would have had in its heyday back in the mid-1990s. A really special piece, and 100 meters water resistant and well loomed. So automatic loomed and highly water resistant. It is a sports watch through and through. Let us discuss MB&F. From one loom shot to another, you know it's coming with this. This was launched as a limited series of 18 pieces in titanium with green Black Badger AGT Ultra Loom. It is the HM10, spelled HMX. The 10th anniversary MB&F came out in 2015. This is the Black Badger edition that came out in 2016. So the same basic watch. It features a Salida base movement and an Agenour-designed jump hour driver-style scrolling time display. So you see how I can actually jump the hour forward or backwards here, like the Amida Digitrend of the 1970s. It's designed to be read at an angle on the wrist. And of course, because Black Badger and James Thompson are involved, there's going to be some spectacular loom. Now, it's titanium, so while it looks large, it wears small. And you can see the pivot point where the strap actually pivots inside the spring bar. It's quite narrow across the wrist, so you could wear this on a wrist as small as 13.5 centimeters circumference, even though it's large. Now, when your hand is on the wheel, you're going to be looking through the lens at the time. That's how you read the watch. That's why it's called a driver's watch. On the underside, you can see there's this lovely 22 karat mass featuring the logos of Black Badger and MB&F, and it is a 22 karat mass, not 21, not 18, and not tungsten. Let's take a look at this one in the dark. Okay, Black Badger is all about loom. Here you can see the grills, automotive inspired. And you can even see that there are little polished gas cap, or I guess radiator caps, on top. Underneath you could see the discs that display the time, and they actually charge through this little skylight. It's almost like the back window of a fastback Mustang, and then you could see how they are visible on the dial side at night, because they're able to charge before they move into the field of vision. And that image you see is actually turned 90 degrees by a set of reflecting lenses. The discs always stay flat inside the watch. How special is that? That is just great. If you want the ultimate loom shot, this is it. What's better than a de Bethune timepiece? Two de Bethune timepieces. Let's do this in chronological order. Here is an exceptionally rare white gold 44mm DB26 perpetual calendar, launched in 2008. This was the beginning of a lot of features that would become synonymous with the brand, including their sapphire hands, which are blue bordered, and the floating lugs. So this was a pioneer for them. It uses their own manufactured caliber 2005 5-day manual wind movement, shown here, to power a perpetual calendar that includes, among other things, a spherical moon phase display. The moon phase, which has an adjustment interval of over 1,000 years, so you won't really have to reset it. It is 1/2 fired blue steel, 1/2 white palladium. It is a sphere, so the moon phase changes as the sphere rotates. You have the day, you have the date, and of course, you've got a leap year function indicator and a month indicator. Lots to love about this watch. De Bethune makes its own cases, dials, and movements. So this is a full manufacture product. You wind it at 6 o'clock. The dial is a lovely white satin silver with fired blue cabochon of titanium to mark the hours. De Bethune has a patent for this moon phase system, as well as their process for fire bluing titanium. Turn the watch upside down and over. Now you can see caliber 2005. More patents. Twin self-adjusting barrels that can never be overwound. 5-day power reserve, 1, 2, 3 shock protection springs. It's triple parachute shock protection. And then you have a balance that is a yoke made of blue titanium with platinum masses outboard, reducing the impact of aerodynamic drag on the balance, reducing the impact that shocks can have on the watch, because most of the mass is outboard to maintain the momentum of the balance, and then it has a very minimal reaction to changing temperatures, so hot and cold will not change the timing of the watch. There is a patented hairspring underneath that, 2 pieces bent by hand and clamped together, beating concentrically like an overcoil, but thin and shock resistant like a flat hairspring. Now you can see black polish in abundance here, specifically across the balance bridge, but also on all the screw heads. Cote de Genève in the form of Cote de Bethune, laid down by abrasive wheel the traditional way on the barrel bridges. You can see they're split in the center so they can reverse the wheel and have the Cote de Bethune. I'm going to call them Cote de Bethune because that's what they call them. They actually mirror each other, with the darker part of the crest facing outboard on both sides. Again, by splitting the bridge in half and reversing the wheel, they're able to do that. We have, I'm going to show you this here, mirrored anglage, very traditional and very broad. You can appreciate it without a loop. And then you can see there's satination on the steel springs for the triple parachute with mirror polishing on the edge. All of the screws are hand finished, and so are the wheels, including satination and solarization on the barrels. It is a very impressive timepiece that wears easily on the wrist. A white gold case, and titanium floating lugs, so you can see how it easily conforms to my wrist. Fitting surprisingly flush. It's under 13 millimeters thick, so it will slide underneath the cuff. More versatile than you might think in terms of sartorial compatibility. Here's one that's even thinner at under 12 millimeters thick. Launched for 2019. This is not gold. This is grade 5 titanium that has been fired yellow. Bethune has a technique that they use for fire bluing titanium. Well, a shorter application of the flame is used to create these yellow tones. Of course, this is the DB28 yellow tones. What it has is actually a little bit of contrast between the darker lugs and the case itself. And you can see that contrast is used again on the dial, where the chapter ring inboard of the hours, the balance bridge, and then the hands are a darker yellow than the primary bridges and plates. You can see how much black polish there is here. Most companies will black polish screws, swan's neck regulators, stud holders, tiny pieces. At Bethune, they black polish with diamond paste the entire thing. 6-day power reserve, a new balance. This is their 2016 model, upgraded in performance, but you still have the triple parachute, the same fundamental characteristics of a titanium wheel with here white gold masses outboard, a new silicon escape wheel to reduce friction and improve performance in between services, and then we have that spherical moon face here in fired yellow titanium and white palladium. You can see there are little globes of titanium outboard that are polished to act as the hour indices. And then on the reverse side, you can see here's the dial, here's the reverse side. You can see the mechanism entirely hand finished that underpins the power reserve indicator. We have engine turning, satination, mirrored beveling, and black polish, all of that on this reverse side. And once again, we have those floating lugs. Now you might ask, what happens if it gets scratched? It's fired, right? It's fired yellow. Yes, it is. Because it's not PVD, it's fired. When the watch goes back for service, they can refire the components and reapply the oxidation. They are the only company I know of that can reapply color to coated cases. Now taking a look at the watch on the wrist, you can see it's even thinner than the DB26 you just saw. Very low, slides underneath the cuff again. A timepiece that's barely 11 millimeters thick, and thanks to the floating lugs, it fits nicely on my wrist. Super light in titanium grade 5, which is more scratch resistant than steel, and just as light as grade 2 titanium. It has every advantage you would expect from Bethune, including technology, outrageous style, wonderful sort of, I would say, confidence about it. It's just beaming with technology, innovation, and a look that is designed to polarize opinions. You either love it or you hate it. Nothing in between. From a company that has built fewer than 2,900 watches since 2002 and makes only 150 watches per year, and this is their opus, the DB28, the watch in its original form that won the 2011 GPHG Aiguille d'Or, the grand prize, best picture, effectively, at the Oscars of watchmaking. If that's not the final watch, what is? Well, not one, but two split chronos from a Lange Söhne, the original 2004 Platinum Saxonia family double split flyback, and right here I bring you the triple split. Now you know the double split, it was a landmark, a chronograph that gives you the ability to split the seconds like a traditional rattrapant, but also the minutes. As you can see, there are superimposed minute hands, and you can see them on top of each other. You can split the timing of two events running concurrently up to 30 minutes in duration. The dial is sterling silver galvanized black. You can see indices as well as Roman numerals indicating this is part of the Saxonia family. So the dial is made of silver. The case is made of platinum. You have a full point clasp, which is a rare thing on Lange watches. And then you have a movement that is just bottomless. The depth here is incredible. This is the L001 because it was launched in 2004 and work started back in 2001. As you can see, it is a wonderful timepiece that includes, or pardon me, started back in, I believe, 2000. Yes, so right here we have a number of elements, including blued screws, black polished screws, beveled and satinated steel chronograph components, German silver bridges made of nickel copper zinc with that lovely golden hue courtesy of the copper, and you can see just how deep it is. This is a movement that you can view diagonally just as easily as you could view it from the top. It's almost like a forest canopy and you're looking down into it. This is world's best finishing standards. Lange might be owned by a luxury group, but it still has the soul of an independent. I'm going to throw this on my wrist. The watch is 43.2 millimeters in diameter. And you can really see that it's big, but it's not overwhelming. It's about 51 millimeters lug to lug. So the further I move my wrist from the camera, the better you see it fits. It's a large watch. It's probably the largest watch I could wear, but it does fit. Now, as the time plays out and we talk about this watch, you can see the separation forming between the split second minute hand where I stopped it, and now you realize how I'm able to gauge the time of two events up to 30 minutes. I can read the split second seconds and minutes, and then I can read the primary seconds and minutes. All of that, and I can resume, and I can fly back. It works as both a split second and a flyback chronograph that can reset without restarting. But we can do better. Here, we have a watch launched in 2018 in 100 pieces in white gold. A very scarce watch, as Lange has only just launched the second series of these this year with rose gold cases and blue dials. This one is better. Again, sterling silver dial, upgrades here. The power reserve indicator now moves down to 6 o'clock, and whereas the original had a 38-hour power reserve manually wound, the new one has a 55-hour power reserve, and we can stop the seconds, the minutes, and the hours. Note, I have 2-hour hands, 2-minute hands, 2 seconds hands, and I can time 2 events occurring concurrently up to 12 hours in duration. Caliber L132, 1-3 being when work started on this movement, and as you can see, it looks good. Both of them look good. Both of them have 2 column wheels. Both of them have incredible depth. This one, though, with a significantly longer power reserve and the triple split capability, a series of 100, there's more to tell. While Lange claims these watches are within 1/2 a millimeter of the thickness of each other, they claim that they're within 1/2 a millimeter, I can tell you that they are identical. I actually put calipers on these 2 watches, and I found they are identical. Both are exactly 16 millimeters thick, which is a bit thicker than Lange claims, but then again, Lange claims the triple split is thicker. It is not. They're identical. And for good measure, you can see the difference between white gold on the right and platinum on the left. White gold is significantly warmer with a little bit of a golden undertone, whereas platinum is truly blinding silver white. Now, the watches do feel substantial on the wrist, but they are both wearable. And I want to emphasize that the white gold is even more wearable for 2 reasons. 1, it's a little bit lighter, and 2, it has something you don't get on the original double split. Take a quick look at these clasps, both deployants. That's unusual on Lange, but the one on the triple split has a trigger release system, whereas the one on the double split is friction fit. This trigger release system was pioneered on the Lange 31, which is a hockey puck sized 31-day power reserve. The trigger ensures that with all the mass of the watch on the wrist, it cannot accidentally snap open. You must depress the triggers to pop it open. So you get the benefit of that upgraded clasp and a slightly lighter feeling on the wrist. And it's a fairly sporty watch. After all, it's a chronograph with a tachymeter scale for gauging the speed of something that is very fast indeed. And since this is a German watch made in East Germany, perhaps we should take it to a German sporting event involving high speed, such as the 24 hours of the Nürburgring. And for good measure, as it is part of the Saxonia family and a distant relative of the loomed dotograph, it gets loom as well. Guys, please give this watch a new home. tmosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details. Time out, Tim out. Have a great weekend, and thanks for logging on.